We return to our top story. The U.S., Israel, and Iran have begun a fragile two-week ceasefire in the Middle East. As we monitor what happens next, New York Times reporters Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan have new insight on the lead-up to the war. According to them in the Times, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pitched President Trump on a war with Iran. This was February 11th in a Situation Room at the White House. In the days following that presentation and in discussions with his aides, the president felt as though it would be a quick war. He was particularly interested in killing the supreme leader and crippling Iran's military, which both happened, and he was emboldened after the successful capture of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. But he also believed Iran would not be in a position to cut off the Strait of Hormuz, which we now know wasn't the case. They did. President Trump's aides discussed the risks, but also did not offer an opinion. His communications team laid out the likely public fallout, but told the president his decision, whatever it was, would be the right one. Vice President J.D. Vance was apparently the only person to make a clear argument against the war, but told the president he would support the ultimate decision. The Times reports the war planning group was kept intentionally small. The Treasury Secretary, Energy Secretary, and Director of National Intelligence were all excluded. President Trump gave the final order on February 27th, saying, quote, Operation Epic Fury is approved. No aborts. Good luck. For more on where we stand today, I want to bring in CBS News contributor Masih Alinejad. She's also an Iranian journalist and women's rights activist. What is the mood in Iran right now?
That's a good question, because the ceasefire, everyone talking across the globe, it's not a real ceasefire in Iran, because right now that we're speaking, the entire nation are in a total internet blackout. So some of the activists and dissidents that I have been in touch with them through Starting, to be honest, they're nervous. Of course, nobody wanted to be bombed. Nobody wanted to get killed. But at the same time, now they are telling me that the entire, family members of these people that I talk to them, they said they're nervous because they feel like a wounded regime is like a wounded animal. The Islamic Republic, a terrorist regime, doesn't mean that they are safe. It's more dangerous to the people, to innocent, unarmed people. And let me tell you that why I say that this is not a real ceasefire in Iran, because the head of judiciary system, Mohseni Ejei, just today, after the ceasefire, he said that the regime should speed up the executions. Only last week, they hanged 11 protesters. So this is the regime that we are talking. When they see that the whole world is, talking about the regime change, my people are shocked when President Trump and his entire team saying that they did a regime change. What kind of regime change? The regime is still in power. They just replaced one Khamenei with another Khamenei. Ghalibaf, the head of parliament, is the one, the architect of massacre. Pezeshkian, under Pezeshkian, more than 40,000 people have been massacred under Masoud Pezeshkian.
So when President Trump says that the current regime appears to be less radical, that is not something that you believe?
At all. You cannot find a less radical leaders. Killing is in the DNA of this regime. And let's be very clear. I want to talk the same language that President Trump always say. When you talk about regime change, this is a fake regime change. There is nothing has changed under this regime. You call them reasonable. Iranians call them killers, murderers.
But as we just said, the New York Times reported that President wasn't guaranteed regime change with this operation, but was guaranteed, yes, we can likely kill the Ayatollah, but not necessarily change regime. So even going into Operation Epic Fury, it wasn't a guarantee that there would be a regime change.
Of course, but this is what they are saying right now. They're selling this to everyone, saying that we did a regime change.
Who's they? President Trump?
President Trump, Hexet, he said that recently, that previous regime, new regime. There is no such thing. This is the Islamic Republic, cannot be reformed. Once President Obama and President Biden called them reformist, pragmatic, moderate. What have you achieved in the United States? Nothing. You just give them time by calling them reasonable or moderate to rebuild their machinery weapons, to take revenge on Arab countries, in the region, and also take revenge on their own people.
Okay. Well, Masih Alinejad, we'll have to leave it there today, but we look forward to talking to you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.